Hello, church family. I think I owe you an apology. 2 weeks ago, I didn't do my normal Wednesday evening comments. That was because I'd been invited to be a part of Hope Church's live Bible study. They were in Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel. We just had a great time with it, and several of you joined in and watched me do it live. Then last week, I had some things come up. I got distracted and wasn't able to do it. So it's been 2 weeks. So I apologize for that. Yeah, I've been kind of doing a bit of nostalgia here. Back in 2005, I was a zone leader of a small group of pastors, and my job was to check on them and pray with them regularly and follow up and see how they're doing and to do a little bit of resourcing for them. And in the process of doing that, in November of 2005, it's been a while, I put together for all of my pastors this 3-ring binder. And in it, I had some things that were useful to me. We were just sharing back and forth. It starts out with some statements of faith, the Apostles' Creed, a little bit of a focus on creating, and we may talk about this later, but a personal mission statement, a personal rule of life. Here's the praxis, the rule of life. We talked about that with our pastors. Selected readings that I thought were valuable to me, different teachings on prayer. But this part right here, Proverbs for pastors. This is what I've been calling lessons learned in life, because that's what it was. It's at the time, every year that I was in ministry, pastoral ministry, I would take the most important lesson for me personally of that year, and I would call it a proverb for pastors. Now, because of the way I did it, I've said this lots of times, that it's not theological. I mean, some parts may be and some parts aren't. It's not really a Bible study. Some parts are, some parts aren't. Some of it's just some advice that I picked up. And it may not be pertinent to you because your life's journey is different than my life's journey. And this reveals often those cutting edges where I was a little bit weak and still am. And so these were things I would tell myself, Rob, make sure you remember this. When I started doing this series of Wednesday night sharing with you just from my heart, I went back to this and also to those that I've added since this 2005 mark. And that's what I've been sharing with you, lessons learned. Every one of these was important to me. They helped define who I am. And I realize they won't all be important to you, but from time to time, you and I may be walking along a similar journey, and some of them may be important. Anyway, since we've missed a couple of weeks, I was just thumbing through. You might remember that I used one that said, love your people. Wherever you are, be there. A good pastor must have a hide like a rhinoceros and a heart that melts like butter. And obviously, I'm borrowing some of these metaphors. I'm not smart enough to come up with them myself. Leaders lead. Pull the trigger. Godly leaders get their vision from God. New Testament leadership is leadership on your knees with a towel. Heuristic thinking is certain, but leaves the possibility that you don't know everything. It's still growing. Always learn from an older, more experienced pastor, and never, ever stop learning. Being is more important than doing. And God is either God of all or God isn't God at all. Boy, you've heard me say those the last few weeks, week after week after week on Wednesday night. And so now I picked this up after a accidental 2-week hiatus. And I come to the next one on the list. It simply says, focus on your God-given call. Don't waste time. There's 2 or 3 reasons for that. The most important is I feel keenly that I belong to God. I feel keenly that He has a place for me at this time in this place, or I probably would not be here. You have heard me say, probably if you've been in any of my churches, you've heard me say many times that I feel a metaphor, a word picture in my mind is that I'm a runner on a distance relay race, and I've picked up the baton from those that have gone before me, and I'm running with everything I've got, ready to hand off the baton, and the time to hand off that baton is getting closer and closer every day. So I only have a certain amount of breaths to take. My heart will only beat a certain amount of times. I only have one race to run. I need to run it with everything I've got. I may not have as much as some, but I've got what I've got. And I can give it everything I've got. And that means I may take time to rest and relax and recharge my batteries. I might take time to do other things, but ultimately, I have to be a steward of my time the same way I am a steward of my money. And my time belongs to God, just like my finances belong to God. That means I can't just waste time for no reason. I'm a pastor. I invest in my churches. I have had the privilege of being able to invest in other pastors' lives. I have a family. I have to invest in them. But there's a lot of things I don't have to invest in. And I don't know if you're like me, this may be why this is a weak spot in my life, but I tend to be a people pleaser. I don't want to let people down. It's hard for me to say no. It's hard for me to kind of buck against people and say, I'm not going to do that. And so people ask me, there's an old saying that says, if you want something done, ask a busy person. Well, I'm a busy person, or I have been through parts of my life. And people would ask me to do more and more. And it was so hard to say, no, I can't do this. But I have to say no sometimes so that I can invest in what I'm called to do. I hope that makes sense to you, because I'm going to say the same thing to you. You have jobs, you have careers. You are godly leaders in our community. You are witnesses for Christ. Many of you have families and loved ones that rely on you. And we are called by God to invest in them. And we're called by God to invest in His kingdom. And we're called by God in spatial areas. You have gifts that I don't have. I probably have some gifts that you don't have. And together as a body of Christ, God, not by accident, puts us together so we can be His hands and His feet where we're at. And so there are probably some activities that are not being good examples of Christ's hands and feet. I have learned to feel passionate about that. And some years ago, I began dropping all the volunteer things that weren't helping me be what God wanted me to be. Now, sometimes even things that are good and sound good, I've learned that they're not that good. I can give you an example. In my drawer, in my office at the school, I can reach in my bottom drawer, pull it out, grab a couple balls. Now, actually, I don't have them here at the church. I brought them from the office. And they don't fit because they're just a couple balls I picked up along the way. But I don't know how many times I've sat with incoming freshmen in college. And we would sit down and talk, and they would ask me how hard college is. And they ask me how much time they need to put into homework for college. And they have other things. They're busy people. They're young people. Some have jobs, some have families. And how many classes, Mr. Kirkham, how many classes do you think I can take? And my answer is this: I don't know. But I do know this. If you are a reasonably intelligent person and you invest yourself in it, you can probably take most of the college classes and get a good grade. Now, that's not all. There are some that are just there. You don't have the aptitude for those. I don't have the aptitude for those. There are some classes I do better in than others naturally. But most of the time, if I didn't have to work, if I didn't have any family, if I had unlimited money, if I had all the time, if I only took one class a semester, I can probably ace that class. That's a lot of ifs. Well, here's the class. I'm probably going to mess this up, but I sit with incoming freshmen. I say this: I can handle a class. Tell you what, I think if I'm doing good, and I may not be today, I might handle 2 classes. Oh. Now, my daughter Christina's a juggler. I am not. I can't handle 3. She probably could, but I don't know if she can handle 4. And then there's 5, and then 6, and then there's after school activities, and there's extra things to run around. And what wipes you out in college is not how hard it is to do a class, but how hard it is to juggle all the load we throw on. And whenever that last ball gets in that mix, like for me, number 3, and I'm juggling, I don't lose a ball. I lose all of the balls. They come bouncing all over the floor. My daughter can do 3, maybe 4. If I throw a 5th or 6th in, they're going to come bouncing all over the floor. Well, that's the lesson for incoming college freshmen, but it's also a lesson for you and I as we live our lives. Because the more we pack into them, the less we're able to do anything well. And sooner or later, we build a life that's like juggling more than we can handle, and it just seems like everything comes down at once. So here's what I would say. Number it right here. Focus on your God-given call. Be where you should be. Be where God calls you to be. Be the person God calls you to be. Don't waste times that you and I both know probably are not conducive to your God-given call. I'm glad to be back with you. I've missed the last couple of weeks. I mean, I've missed it myself. I don't know if my pearls of wisdom are very wise, but I enjoy sharing them, and I feel grateful that so many of you, as they do, which is probably maybe 4 dozen of you, actually take the time to, or maybe more, take the time to listen to me week after week. Thank you for that. And whatever you're doing this week, be everything God calls you to be. And if you're in over your head and juggling life, see if you can't let go of a ball or 2 and give yourself a little more time in the other balls. Have a good week.